Father Bernas has been very good as a mentor.
As an academician, Father Bernas is unparalleled.
He was the guru, talagang the eminence degree of the profession.
A legal heavyweight with a soft heart of a mentor.
For many years, Father Bernas taught constitutional law and public international law at the Ateneo Law School, or ALS. He earned his Bachelor of Laws in 1962 from ALS, took the bar, and was among the top 10 examinees. He would later pursue his Master of Laws and Doctor of Juridical Science degrees from New York University. He served as Dean of ALS from 1974 to 1976. Subsequently, he was named 28th President of the Ateneo de Manila University. He returned as Dean of ALS in 2000 and retired in 2004, becoming its Dean Emeritus.
I first met Father Bernas in 1972 at the Ateneo Law School in Padre Faura. As a relatively young professor then in constitutional law, I was awed by his brilliance.
He was always supportive and inspiring. Yet, I have to say that he was also terrifying in the sense that you don't want to disappoint the Father Bernas, so it made you try harder in his class.
Although his questions were very difficult, he liked to keep a light environment so that we wouldn't be so nervous, but it still didn't save us from the difficulty of his questions. And he's able to approach us at the level where we're at so that we can have a better understanding of the law.
His passion is for teaching the law, especially constitutional law. It attaches to you. It somehow permeates into you also.
He introduced the QPI, the Quality Point Index. The idea is that a student should not merely aspire to get a passing grade of 75. It should be higher, so that he should strive for a higher grade. And actually, a number of other law schools adopted that also.
I consider Father Bernas as really the guru in constitutional law. Father really has been able to mentor us through the years while being in the academy. And our experience is that as academics who have been, in a way, in action on constitutional issues that went up to the Supreme Court, Father Bernas has been consistently our guiding light, our star when it comes to preparing our memoranda and even our arguments before the Supreme Court.
He was a perfect colleague. You could tell him anything and be free with him in your conversation. And he would help out also in your difficulties. So we found him to be a perfect, ideal colleague in the profession.
On matters between religion and the law, Father Bernas was liberal and fair, the St. Thomas More of our times.
We admired him so much that many times we wished that he would join the court.
Father Bernas is the epitome of transcendence.
Legendary.
Unconventional.
A legal luminary and authority in constitutional law, Father Bernas was one of the drafters of the 1987 Constitution. He was also frequently invited by the Supreme Court to stand as amicus curiae. Among these instances were the following cases: the amendment of the death penalty law, the propriety of the exercise of police power over the country's historic and artistic wealth, and the justiciability of a second impeachment complaint against then Chief Justice Hilario Davide Jr.
The court has always acknowledged Father Bernas' credibility and untarnished reputation. So he was often asked to shed light on his views about some hotly contested issues.
Not very many are given that privilege, I will even say honor, of being asked by the Supreme Court to counsel the Supreme Court. You know, the Supreme Court is supposed to be composed of the best and brightest lawyers in the country. But when the justices invite anybody to be an amicus curiae, that means that they look up to that person as a source of greater authority.
His performance is, as amicus curiae has been acknowledged by the justices themselves as excellent. I think one of them, Justice Conchita Carpio Morales, who is now the ombudsman, is characterized it as an august performance. So doon mo makikita na talagang believe sila.
In the Supreme Court, we were always happy to hear from him, either as an amicus curiae or as a party litigant or a counsel for a party litigant. But I am particularly impressed by his oral presentations as amicus curiae in the court. He was always robust in his presentation, scholarly, and dependable. That's why during my term, my more than 11 years in the Supreme Court, he was a favorite whenever we have need of a friend of the court or an amicus curiae.
In 1986, we were both named by President Cory Aquino to the Constitutional Commission to draft the new constitution after the EDSA revolution. What he did was to listen and to provide guidance on critical issues.
His peers would avidly listen to Father Bernas and oftentimes would be swayed to his position. That's how much they respected him as an authority in constitutional law.
Now, Father Bernas, as an expert in constitutional law, was able to put in place the necessary reforms as safeguards against the government abuses, particularly in the office of the President and in the Bill of Rights.
For example, he placed the provision that the legislature can revoke the proclamation of martial law. He placed the provision that civilians cannot be tried by military courts, that the President cannot legislate when martial law is in force. And he also put there a provision that when martial law is proclaimed, the privilege of the writ of habeas is not automatically suspended.
This is another thing not known to us while we were deliberating on the formation, a draft of a new constitution. Father Bernas was already writing his book. So instead of bothering with resolutions, he would already take down what was argued, what was discussed in preparation for the book. So he was the first one to come out with a book on the new constitution because he was writing it along the way. Very smart fellow.
He writes simply, but robustly.
Father Bernas writes with the insights of a man who was actually there in the thick of things.
A preeminent scholar and prolific writer, Father Bernas wrote magisterial books on both the 1973 and the 1987 Philippine constitutions, and on the fields of constitutional law and public international law. He is also noted for his legal insights in Sounding Board, his regular opinion column at the Philippine Daily Inquirer. His fearless and no-nonsense commentaries on Philippine presidencies, covering from that of Cory Aquino to Noynoy Aquino, are collected in a popular book series titled A Living Constitution.
Father Bernas would often tell us that for a man to be remembered, he ought to plant a tree, sire a child, or write a book. To me, his books are his greatest legacy to the academe and the judiciary. They are required readings and standard references.
Like the historical and the juridical study of the Bill of Rights, the 1987 Philippine Constitution, a commentary, and the intent of the 1986 Constitution writers. And there are many more books which he has written. Now, law students rely on these books because they are so comprehensive in approach, covering the history of the law up to the development of the jurisprudence.
He writes about the Constitution and constitutional law from the viewpoint of someone who was part of drafting the Constitution, and it makes a great difference to hear that particular voice. And that viewpoint is very precious.
It really helped me understand the fundamental law of the land, the Constitution, and it helped me think for myself. I guess that's the greatest thing that he's contributed and the greatest thing for me as a student.
Whenever I needed to answer questions, difficult questions, delicate questions on constitutional law and political law, my first reference is always his work. This is shown in various decisions I have penned where the footnotes always include him in his area of expertise.
Father Bernas writes very well. He writes very simply. And for most people, he's very accessible. He doesn't write, in the verbose way of some lawyers perhaps, or, in a way that is replete with legalese. He writes very simply, and that is I have to say, that's his gift too.
For me, it is amazing that Father Bernas can articulate his points in a very clear and concise manner that even an ordinary layman would be able to understand his explanations on very complex legal and political matters.
His column is continuing commentaries on legal issues. It's awaited every week, and this has also guided people in the judiciary as well as in the legal circles.
He makes sure to bring down the law to the level of the people who really are the target of the law.
He would explain the Constitution in words which ordinary people can understand.
His columns are always to enlighten the faithful, to broaden one's awareness. When people get narrow in their way of thinking, in his articles, you can see that here is a person who is genuinely concerned of the development of peoples.
So I would say he's being an author, he's being a constitutionalist, as well as a lawyer, help the development of jurisprudence in this country.
Father Bernie was a person of faith and of depth.
He's like a father to us, a spiritual father.
But beyond his stature as eminent professor, constitutional law authority, and writer, Father Bernas is first and foremost a Jesuit. He entered the society on June 20, 1950, and was ordained a priest on June 10, 1965. He led the Filipino Jesuits as their provincial superior from 1976 to 1982 at the height of martial law. Father Bernas loves saying the Mass, and students at the Ateneo look forward to his short but sweet homilies.
Everyone would say that his greatest contribution is, of course, the field of constitutional law.
It's actually very easy to say that, well, all you need to do is look at the thick green book that Father B has produced.
But apart from that, I would say his greatest contribution is being really a Jesuit lawyer. Apart from him and Father Ferrer, there's a big gap. Wala pang new generation of a Jesuit lawyer. And I think him being able to inculcate Ignatian values while teaching the law is a great contribution in itself.
It's easy to forget the lessons that you go through as a student, but the fact that he's a shining example, his brilliance, his humility, the total person that he shares to the students, he is really an epitome of the Jesuit value of cura personalis. And he really connects to the students, he really connects with people.
He was my bar reviewer for Consti Law. And he started talking about how the Constitution guarantees standard of life for a Filipino family. And he went into, do you know how much it takes for a family of 5 to keep body and soul together? And he said a sum, a certain sum. And it really struck me at that time, because I kept horses, and I said my horses are better fed. So that very day, I gave up my horses. Yeah, that first encounter with the horses changed my social outlook, no? Made me more, maybe a responsible person to society.
An anecdote I can't forget, to which I am very grateful for as a former student of Father Bernas, was the time he vouched for me. This was at the height of the Lenny Villa hazing controversy under the deanship of my wife. We were enjoying our dinner when suddenly an elderly Jesuit priest asked Cynthia, "Oh, Dean, how can we be sure that you'll be impartial about this investigation when your husband is an Aquilan?" To which Father Bernas readily stood up, went behind my back and wrapped his arms around my shoulder and retorted that, "You see, while the judge here is an Aquilan, he is not a fratman."
That's what makes him great. He doesn't limit his influence in people's lives, and he doesn't let his stature as a constitutionalist get in the way of connecting to people.
My 2 children became his students. And each time we would see each other, he had a loving phrase for me. "Oh, the mother of Vic and Lala." And I would always say, "Father, I have a name." He says, "No, as far as I'm concerned, you're the mother of Vic and Lala." So it would hit me that this person knew what was the core reason of my existence.
The real Jesuit is one foot of the Jesuit is in the church and the other foot is in the world. And the Jesuit tries to straddle between the two, the church and the world. If you ask me, Father Bernie is that Jesuit. And for this, I must really salute him, a great leader, truly one of our great pillars in the Society of Jesus, a person who is definitely a man of the church. There is that love of the church, and at the same time committed to human dignity and to human rights.
We learned through the years that he is a total person.
A unifier.
The guru in constitutional law, mentor.
He has the ability, the unique ability to be able to put together doctrines of the church and doctrines of constitutional law seamlessly.
Truly one of our great pillars in the Society of Jesus.
Joaquin Bernas, primus inter pares.
A real man for others.